JJ, TC, Mark, Breck behind the boards. All our guys are here today. Even I finally made it. So thank you so much. Good to see you and hear you guys tonight. ATL Prime Sports is brought to you by the Association of Professional Ball Players of America. Thank you for your sponsorship and the partnership here with the show. Make sure you guys give us a follow on Twitter. It's at ATL Prime Sports, on Instagram as well, at Quarter Todd, at JJ Get You One. That's JJGETCHUONE. I'm at ATL Traffic Lady. Mark is at Mancini Sports. And of course, we got it at Stables Network. Also, feel free to chime in anytime on Twitter or dial us up 678-280-7123. And then it's 720-707-2699. All that stuff, we put that on Twitter for you. So, hey, you can get us. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Listen live anytime. The easiest way, prime time with the stablesnetwork.com. Got that? Prime time with the stablesnetwork.com. So click on that real quick and join us that way if that's easier for you. Hey, what's up, everybody? How y'all doing tonight? TC?
Doing great, Stephanie. I was going to say I love the Sesame Street S block, and I see that I'm still iPad down here in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, man. I like it. We got Sesame Street block, we got iPad, and we got JJ.
Working on it. Working on it.
I turned out perfect in the TV world.
Y'all look great. I love it. I'll join you on camera next week. Looking good. Looking mighty fine. Hey, Breck, everybody. So what's up for tonight's show? We got a lot on deck. It's ATL Prime Sports Top 5 in Atlanta sports history. We got sports headlines. Of course, your calls, everybody, right here on ATL Prime Sports. So first, let's get to the headlines. USC will reopen this fall with students in class and online. Looks like USC versus Bama is on. Your thoughts, JJ?
Well, it's huge. With Southern Cal being one of those schools in California that was threatening to not play sports and not have class on campuses, looks like they're going to resume this fall with students at the University of Southern California. Safety measures in place. You're going to have, I think they're going to offer classes online and in person, make more space in the dorms for social distancing. And of course, they're going to have mandatory COVID-19 testing. And I've seen in other articles as well, they're going to require PPE, which is personal protective equipment, the mask, gloves while you're in class. So this is big news for college football because that means students are going to be at campus. So that means legally they can play football now. And a lot of this came from parents, especially at USC. It's a very expensive school. I saw the average tuition was $58,000 a year. So students our parents, I should say, did not want to pay for their students' education and not be at least able to use the classroom. So I think that had a big thing to do with it. But this is great news for college football around the country, especially for that nationally televised USC-Bama game on September 5th. Huge news.
It'll be at Jerry World, which we'll see how many fans are in the stands. If there are fans in the stands, as of right now, the game is on. We still have some time to wait and see. But I'm excited. It's at least a step in the right direction.
Absolutely.
That it is. Hey, here's another headline, guys. No Hawks basketball till 2021. What are your thoughts on that, TC?
Well, my thoughts are the Hawks do not deserve to be in a 22-game tournament or a 24-game tournament. It really doesn't matter to me. This is a club that lost 47 games this season, the second most in the NBA behind the Warriors. I know that Coach Lloyd Pierce was concerned that it would stunt the growth of his young team. A few games is not going to stunt the growth of his team. We'll see the Hawks most likely in January 21 when the NBA 21 season starts back up, unless COVID-19 changes the schedule. We'll have to wait and see. But the Hawks don't belong in the playoffs. The goal was to get Zion Williamson in New Orleans in the playoffs. They did so.
Well, TC, you're right about the Hawks not deserving to make the playoffs, but it would have been nice to have a chance. That's what he's saying. The NBA Board of Governors are expected to approve a league proposal of a 22-team format to restart the season in Orlando at the at the Walt Disney World Resort. It's not going to include the Hawks, as TC said. Sorry, Coach Pierce, you're going to have to get geared up with your young guys next year. The vote is expected to go down Thursday on a conference call tomorrow, actually at 12:30. So we'll see if this vote passes the 22 teams. A lot of owners were in agreement that they wanted a 30-team comeback for the regional money and the TV contracts. So we'll see if this proposal is approved. The games would be at Walt Disney World Resort, as I was saying, and that's per an ESPN source. And it would include 13 Western teams, 9 Eastern Conference teams, and that makes up the 22.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I got another headline to ask you all about. NFL players are not expected to return to team facilities until training camp. What are your thoughts on that, JJ?
Well, most teams have already reopened their facilities on a limited basis for essential employees amidst the coronavirus pandemic. But still, healthy players, not able to return. They're going to return for training camp and training camp only. I really think this is going to affect players like rookies, players, new faces on new teams, things like that. But if you're a veteran and you're in place, the Zoom meetings and everything that technology has in place today, you should be able to catch up and get on par. But I do think it could affect the rookies, the incoming rookies who have not gotten NFL experience yet. TC, what do you think?
You're going to have 6 weeks. I mean, you should be able to get ready for a football season in 6 weeks. Yes, the rookies may be a step behind, but these safety measures are put in for a reason. I agree with it. I like what the NFL's doing. They're not allowing joint practices. I like it.
Yeah, I do too.
Hey, guys, Major League Soccer, they avoid the lockout. What do you think, TC?
Well, that's good news. You know, professional soccer is really big here in Metro Atlanta. It'll be interesting to see if they start the season with fans in the stands. I believe they will not. But as the season comes along and if the pandemic gets better, then gradually they'll put fans in the stands.
Yeah, Major League Players Association approved a proposal from Major League Soccer that was related to the economics of this season, as well as a modified CBA. So there's 2 things going on. They wanted to agree on what's going to happen for financial payments, everything in the 2020 season. So they had to modify that and get a new CBA in place. The new CBA is going to be good till 2025. This also, as you mentioned, opens up a door for a return next month with the tournament. Guess what, folks? Disney's going to be as full as that University of Georgia quarterback room, because you're going to have the NBA down there and possibly Major League Soccer all down there at Wide World of Sports in Walt Disney World. So it's going to be a happening place for Major League Soccer and the NBA.
And you know, JJ, that's going to be interesting because the NBA is starting so late. You know, the season's starting so late, they're going to go up against college football, and they're going to lose in those ratings big time. There's a lot of people think they could have started the NBA a month ago, and they wouldn't have had to go head-to-head as long. Now they're going to go to head-to-head. We'll see if baseball starts. They're going to have to go – well, they always go to head-to-head at the start of the college football season, so there'll be no change for them. If they start, we'll see how many games it is and et cetera. Same thing for the National Hockey League. They're going to go ahead against football, professional and college. So it'll be really interesting to find out what the viewers' choices are. I'm thinking it'll be football 1, basketball 2, hockey 3. Now, you know, that's probably the order that's going to have.
I can agree with that, and I ditto everything you say.
Nothing's going to beat the NFL in terms of ratings. Not college football, not anything. The NFL is the king in terms of ratings, and the way they've gone. Let's be fair. The NFL has had an advantage. They've had all off season to get it together to prepare for COVID-19. The other sports have not had that opportunity.
Very true statement. And we all know from the movie Concussion, the NFL owns a day of the week and Monday, really. So you look at that, the viewerships are going to lean heavily towards the NFL. But who knows? I'm going to be excited to see who pulls in, who's close, if there's more viewers for another sport versus another. It's going to be fun to watch and play out come September.
We're going to go from no sports to having every sport on at the same time. Hopefully baseball will come back. Could you imagine that? You're going to go from having nothing to everything, and you're going to have 5 sports when you include soccer. Oh, wait a minute. Got to include NASCAR, golf,
Yeah.
What else is there? If I've forgotten anything else, I mean, holy smokes, the viewers going to have plenty of choices because right now, instead of watching Super Bowl week on NBC Sports Network, I'm tired of it. I'm ready for some live sports.
Absolutely.
There you go. There you go. Hey guys, let's I know we got Dave Cohen coming in, but let's get a couple quick calls. Wayne is online from Memphis. Hey Wayne, welcome to the show.
All right. Well, listen, I started calling check in. I know you were talking about the NFL returning, and I think they've, like you said, had time to get it right, and they've actually done the right thing by having everybody starting at the same time and everybody on the same schedule versus the NCAA, which is kind of letting schools do their own thing.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. That's why TC and I have mentioned, that college football should go to a commissioner, a czar, one dictatorship ruler, whatever you want to call it, just to get some sense from conference to conference. The NFL, Roger Goodell's done a really good job of keeping everything tight-knit. The NFL draft was a super success online and in Zoom format, for lack of a better term, right now. But everybody joined online and tons and tons of people watched. And TC even said he kind of liked it a little better from the personal aspect. So I think all that goes into effect of how things are run from top down.
Well, I'm sorry, I was going to say, Wayne, it's easier for the NFL to me than it is for college football because you have all these voices from all these other conferences. Where in the NFL, Roger Goodell said from the beginning, I'm in charge. He told the owners, the players, do not publicly comment on anything unless you run it basically through our National Football League offices in New York City, where you've got the 5 conferences, the 5 Power 5 conferences. Each conference is going at its own pace. Each conference will start up drills. Each conference will start up training camp differently. So the NFL has one voice in one direction, and college football has several voices in several directions.
Yeah, well, another sport that has a pretty authoritarian rule is NASCAR, and there's only 40 drivers there, and there's hundreds of drivers who would just love to jump in one of those seats, and so those teams and those drivers really do buckle down under whatever rule or whatever the who's ever in charge of NASCAR says, and otherwise they're just going to be out and somebody else will jump right in. And because of that, I think they were able to come back to actually having a sport on TV before any of the other ones were.
You're absolutely right. NASCAR was the first one back, and we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. A car is 6 foot long, 4 feet, 5 feet wide. So social distancing is in effect as long as you're in your car. The only thing you really had to worry about was the pit crew and the other the crew chiefs and things like that. So I think that had a lot to play with it.
Well, and they were able to screen everybody before they let them come back and participate in whichever event. But one thing that was kind of funny that I did notice was the race at Bristol this past Sunday was an incident on the last lap of the race. 2 drivers ran into each other. Typically, as soon as they would pull into the pits after the checkered flag was thrown, they would be jumping out of their cars and going right at each other. It was funny, and I think this came from the top. They told those drivers, don't be seen on camera without some kind of mask on. So they got out of their cars, they took their helmets off, they put the mask on, and by then they had cooled down and went over there and just kind of had a conversation with each other. So the lag time and having to get their, all their safety gear on kind of took a little bit of the heat off of the situation.
NASCAR to me gets an A+ the way they've handled everything. I mean, so far it's really gone good. From nobody's tested positive, the pit crew, the drivers, or anything like that. Now, let's be fair, it is easier, I think, to do that in NASCAR. It's probably difficult for the pit crew, but for the drivers, it's very easily. So, in other sports like football, it's going to be much tougher to handle.
Well, and you've also got to consider that another thing you got to consider is the other sports don't really have everybody together at each event, whereas NASCAR has all the teams at the event each time.
Good point. Very good point.
Yeah. But only other NASCAR news, and then I'll let y'all get back to the show there, is Dover race had 2 races last year and preceding years before that. They're dropping one of those races, and they're going to go back to racing in Nashville, Tennessee, or what's Lebanon, Tennessee, but it's north of Nashville at a track that they've had there. So Tennessee will then have, the races in Bristol and in Nashville beginning next year.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that. You'll have to keep us posted on the NASCAR. We're not the biggest fans, but we always appreciate your insight and keeping us up to date with what's going on.
It's going to be
hasn't been raced out in a couple of years, correct?
Yeah, it's been more than a couple. But speaking of which, they'll be in y'all's backyard this Sunday.
Yes, they will. Yes, they will. Any final thoughts for us, Wayne?
No, that's about all we got, because that's about the only sports going on. And, y'all have covered the fact that this fall it's going to be all sports all the time.
Wall to wall.
I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Hey, and I'd like to see that. I'm glad y'all have got the ATL traffic lady there to kind of keep you two in check, because when she's not there to referee between y'all two, it really goes wild.
Well, hey, you know what though, Wayne, it's funny. She came on with the big block S, and then she put a picture on and said, next week, video's got to be on. We can't have a Sesame Street block S on here.
I took the S
all right.
Now I got the picture. Video next week, Wayne. Video next week.
Fantastic. All right. Well, look, y'all have a good rest of the show, and I will continue listening.
Thank you. Always great to talk to you. Thanks so much, Wayne from Memphis. Great friend of the show, in fact, a partner with the show out there. Hey, another great friend of the show, Dave Cohen, is joining us, voice of the Georgia State Panthers. He's out here with us this evening. Dave, want to welcome you back to ATL Prime Sports. How you doing?
I'm pretty good. How you guys doing tonight?
Fantastic.
Great.
Doing well.
TC, I'm going to toss over to you. Talk about some stuff there with Dave.
All right, Dave, we're going to do some Georgia State football history with you tonight, and then we'll have you do like a way too early projection. Let's go with your top 3 quarterbacks in Georgia State history thus far. Rank them for us.
Well, you're making that kind of easy, because it would have to be the last 3. Dan Ellington, along with Nick Arbuckle and Connor Manning. There were some others back in the earlier days of the program, and I don't mean that like 100 years ago, because we've only played 10 seasons. But there's been a few decent quarterbacks along the way. But they played during an early time of growth in the program, and probably didn't play with all the benefits that the guys in the last 3 or 4 years have had. Again, Nick Arbuckle, who's now playing in the Canadian Football League up in Ottawa, after being in Winnipeg, and then, or I should say Calgary. And then Connor Manning, who came in, and, Nick led Georgia State to its first bowl game back in 2015. That was a loss to San Jose State in the AutoNation Cure Bowl down in Orlando. And then they brought in Connor Manning, who had started his collegiate career at Utah and decided to transfer as a transfer, not a grad transfer, but he came in and had 2 years to play, and led Georgia State to its second bowl game, the AutoNation Cure Bowl in Orlando, and a win over Western Kentucky. And then you bring in Dan Ellington 2 years ago, and record-wise, not a great season that first year, but they turned it around this past year, starting off, as you know, with that big win over Tennessee and Knoxville, and then finishing a little bit slow when Dan was playing with that partially torn ACL. They lost 4 of their last 5, but still managed to make the Arizona Bowl, of which Georgia State will be the final Sun Belt Conference team to play in the Arizona Bowl with the new bowl lineup. And then, you'd have to say maybe Dan Ellington, Nick Arbuckle, Connor Manning. It could really go any of the 3. They were all such a huge part of the last 6 years of Georgia State football. It's hard to say which one you'd put above the other. They all made huge strides in their 2 years each, leading the program.
Listening to Dave Cohen, friend of the show, voice of the Georgia State Panthers, right here on ATL Prime Sports. Dave, it's good to have you back. TC went top 3 quarterbacks. I'm going to go top 3 wins. I'd like to hear it from the play-by-play voice. What do you think are the top 3 wins in Georgia State football history?
Well, obviously, that's easy. Knoxville, Tennessee is, I would say, number 1. Or I could just say top wins, and then we could rank them. So let's just throw out there the win over Tennessee and Knoxville. How about the win over Shorter, 41-7, September the 2nd, 2010, the Georgia Dome. First win in the first game of the history of the program in front of about 31,000. I know Shorter is not Tennessee, but that was a great night, and it was great to start off the entire football program. Georgia State went almost 100 years without having football. And then the first time they step out onto the green carpet at the Georgia Dome, they put 41 up on Shorter. Again, it was Shorter. I understand it, but it was a great night and a great way to get the program started. 34-7, the final score, the final regular season game of the 2015 season down in Paulson Stadium in Statesboro. Normally I would say lovely Statesboro, but let's not go that far. Handed Georgia Southern their worst home loss in the history of the program. Not only was it that, but it was the 6th and final necessary win to become bowl eligible, and they were. That was, again, the 2015 Nick Arbuckle team that lost to San Jose State in the team's first bowl down in Orlando. Fast forward to Connor Manning, Georgia State back to the AutoNation Cure Bowl, Western Kentucky, first out of Conference USA, first bowl win in the history of the program over the Hilltoppers. And again, then you can fast forward to the win over Tennessee. So those are the top 4. If you had to do a Mount Rushmore of wins in Georgia State football history, you can't argue with any of those 4. Might go back to the first Sun Belt win, so on and so forth. First road win was over Campbell that first year up in Bowies Creek, North Carolina on a field goal. But I think if you had to do a Mount Rushmore, it might be those 4. The only one that you might interchange as you move along would be the win over Shorter, just because it's Shorter. And I said I picked that a little bit out of nostalgia. So those would be my 4. First, the Georgia Southern, win over Tennessee, and the win over Western Kentucky. Those 3 right there would be my top 3 wins.
You're listening to Dave Cohen, the voice of the Georgia State Panthers here on ATL Prime Sports. Dave, give me the top 5 overall players in this program's history, in your opinion.
Let me just add one final addendum to that previous question from JJ.
Sure.
September 12, 2020. If indeed we're at Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and if Georgia State manages to leave that stadium with a win over the Crimson Tide on the night of September 12, we'll do a special show and we'll rearrange our Mount Rushmore of Georgia State football wins, and we'll throw that one up there as well.
I'd love to do it.
You can stuff me in the suitcase for that game, Dave. I'll go right over there for that victory.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice.
So give us your top 5 overall players in the football program's history.
Oh, boy. Even only 10 years, that leaves me a lot of players to choose from. You could just look at the guys that are in the National Football League with regards to, top players in the league. First player to be drafted, Christo Bilukidi, ended up getting drafted by the Raiders. He was definitely one of the top linemen in the history of the program. You could go to a guy like Albert Wilson, who was not drafted, but who was a free agent signee of the Chiefs. Definitely one of the top players that you've seen in the program. I've actually, over the years, have kept a running list of what I call my all-decade team. My top, I can run, if you got time, I can run through some of these, and then we can pick out 5.
Go ahead.
Obviously, Arbuckle, Manning, and Ellington, quarterback. I've got a bunch of guys in the offensive line. But I probably have to go with a guy like, Ulrich John, who was a 7th-round pick of the Indianapolis Colts a few years ago, and Emmanuel.
Maybe an honorable mention would have to be Will Lutz, New Orleans kicker, right? Maybe. And he's had a pretty good
That's
career.
True. I mean, if we're gonna include special teams guys, right here I've got Will Lutz. In his years at Georgia State, made 31 field goals, 120 points after. I'd give Brandon Wright, who averaged almost 49 yards a punt, would be our top punter. And you guys had him on a few weeks ago. Hopefully, when we are able to move forward, hopefully he gets a nice shot and is able to make the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then I never forget our first kicker, Ian Vance. From back in that first and second season of Georgia State football, was a very, very good kicker. Had spent time on campus at Alabama and Georgia Tech. I didn't kick at either one, but finally got an opportunity with Bill Curry in the startup here at Georgia State, and certainly took advantage of him. And again, the one play I can always remember by Ian, I mean, I can close my eyes and we're broadcasting out of that elevated trailer in Boys Creek, North Carolina. And he's got to kick a field goal to beat the Campbell University Camels in that first year, and he splits the uprights, and Georgia State wins its first road game in program history. And what an easy flight that was. Or I don't remember if we flew or bussed back to Atlanta that night, but it was great to win that, and that's something with regards to Ian that I'll always remember.
You're listening to Dave Cohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers, right here on ATL Prime Sports. Dave, let's change subjects a little bit. With all the conferences saying, hey, we may be able to play, we may not be able to play, what happens if Georgia State can't play in Tuscaloosa in September?
Well, that's you would normally call it a $64,000 question, but it's really like $1.2 million question, because you guys know what these guarantee games mean when a group of 5 or even an FCS program jumps up to play a Power 5, and certainly we've talked about it before. It's the trickle down economics of college athletics. Power 5s get all of that television money, and the only way that everybody else gets a piece of it is to play these guarantee games. And so that would be a big shot to the budget for Georgia State athletics if we're not able to play that game. And aside from the fact that it would be disappointing to the coaches and players, because, that's a great atmosphere to go into. And we don't go into that kind of an atmosphere week in and week out in the Sun Belt Conference. So just putting aside the financial aspect of it, the pageantry of college football on the biggest stage, or one of the biggest stages that you can possibly play on, Tuscaloosa, on a Saturday. I don't have the game time yet, but that's neither here nor there. That, I think, would be, as disappointing to coaches and players, to not be able to be on the field in that atmosphere as it would be to the brass at Georgia State to not be able to cash that check or deposit that check that they would get from Tuscaloosa for playing that football game. So, Georgia State, it would be tough to not even, God forbid that something happens and we don't play the season, because I know right now, and I can't speak for him, and I haven't spoken to him obviously in a few weeks, or actually a few months, but I know that Sean Elliott feels really good about where this program is headed. They've been in a bowl game at 15, they've been in a bowl game in 17, and they were in a bowl game this year in Arizona. And even though they didn't win it, they did win 7 games this year. And with a healthy Dan Ellington, I think they could have won, 8 or 9 games this year. So, again, growing pains, if you want to call it that, or steps in the right direction in the continuance of the building of this program. And I know they feel really good. They don't lose a whole lot on either side of the ball. They lose Hunter Atkinson, who's trying to make the Falcons. They do lose Dan Ellington on the field, but as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, he stays on as an assistant coach, so you still got him on the field, and you still have his leadership in the locker room. They did lose Trey Barnett, but they've got 3 experienced running backs back, and they also signed one during the signing period. So with everything that's back on the offensive side and everything that's back on the defensive side, to be honest with you, not that I would ever not be honest with you, I really think that amongst the group that's down there at the stadium and those coaches' offices, they really want to play this year because I think we have momentum, even with a loss to Wyoming. I mean, there's just momentum in the program because things are starting to happen. The recruiting is getting better. They're winning more games, and to not play would it wouldn't sideline the program per se, but it would just slow the momentum a little bit.
Dave, one last question before we let you go. You're listening to Dave Cohen here on ATL Prime Sports. I've saw in some publications Georgia State is projected to go 6-6, 4-4 in the conference. Do you agree with them? And what is your way too early prediction for this upcoming 2020 season if they play it? Because you lost Dan Ellington and you lose the 1,400-yard rusher Trey Barnett.
Right, and they've got a kid, Jamil Muhammad, who transferred in from Vanderbilt, who I guess as of right now you would consider to be the favorite, although Cornelius Brown, who was the backup last year, is back, and they signed a quarterback. So, yeah, you're right. Losing Trey Barnett is huge. Losing Dan Ellington on the field in uniform is huge. So definitely a couple of big spots to fill. They're scheduled to open with Murray State on Saturday, September 5. They should be able to beat Murray State at home. Week 2 would be at Alabama. Week 3 would be at home against Louisiana Lafayette. And then week 4 would be at Charlotte, followed by a game against East Carolina. So, without going through the entire schedule, once again, I would hope that there are 7 to 8 wins on that schedule based on the fact that, again, we've got momentum. I'm not as worried about losing Trey Barnett because they've got other running backs, although he had a great senior season. I am a little worried about the quarterback position, not because of who we have back there, but because who we have back there, they're not experienced like Dan was coming in from the junior college ranks. Cornelius Brown didn't get a lot of playing time last year as a true freshman. And again, Muhammad had to sit out when he transferred from Vanderbilt. So that is a little bit of a concern. But I don't know. Once again, 7-8 wins, in this reporter's opinion, would be, again, another step in the right direction, depending upon what we see from the rest of the Sun Belt Conference. I always look at those last 3 games. And the last 3 weeks of the season, November 14, up the mountain to Boone to take on Appalachian State, on the road to Mobile to take on South Alabama, and at home with Georgia Southern. So 3 tough games. South Alabama was a little down last year. We'll see how they are. But, Appalachian State and Georgia Southern are no joke. So I want to have those 7 wins or those 6 wins before we get to the final 3 games of the regular season so we're not behind the 8 ball trying to become bowl eligible.
Dave Cohen, friend of the show, voice of the Georgia State Panthers. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. You always have that great insight. Really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to see you back again. And next week? I think you're here every week, right? So come on back next week, why don't you? And we'll definitely see you then. Thank you, Dave.
Well, yep, thank you. I'm always on whenever TC and JJ say I can come on. So whatever they say is whatever we'll do.
You can come on anytime, man.
Anytime. We love having you. Always great. Thank you. Again, that's Dave Cohen.
All right, well, you guys take it easy. Thank you.
Good chatting with you. Voice of the Georgia State Panthers. Thanks for joining us this evening. Guys, I have a friend whose son is on the Panthers basketball. He's going to be a rising sophomore. We'll talk about him soon. So we have something to look forward to in the fall. All right, we got another phone call real quick before we go to some other topics. Let's talk to Terry. Terry, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. I just want to switch gears for just a little bit. I want to get you guys feel on something. This is Major League Baseball. And I read somewhere where in the past week or so that Major League Baseball literally terminated the contracts of dozens and dozens of minor league players. And I wondered, what was behind that? And what does that mean? I mean, does that mean like anybody above the AAA level or double? I mean, I heard the number there was like hundreds of players were let go. What's behind that? Are you guys familiar with that?
We are. I mean, it's all about the money. These clubs are going to cut costs at any level, And if players are not playing, they're not going to pay them. Now, some clubs are still paying their minor league players. The Dodgers are. I know that David Price is going to kick in $1,000 to every minor leaguer for the month of June. I know that the Washington Nationals made a horrific public relations decision because these players normally make about $400 a month. Well, they're going to go ahead and only give them $300. And I'm going, you can't do that. The $100 a month to these kids is tremendous. And after they thought about it, and they decided after the public relations disaster hit them, they went ahead and decided we'll go ahead and pay the players their full salary. Some clubs' financial situation is way different than others, like the Yankees and et cetera. They have the advantage a little bit financially, but that's what they're going to do at this time.
Well, but which players are not being paid? Now, I would think that, and I don't know this, but I would think, like, say, for example, Atlanta, they would keep the AAA players definitely, wouldn't they? And the AA, would they go below that? And if they don't pay these guys, well, you're going to have trouble filling the rosters. I mean, it just. Well, I know that, on every major league team pays the players of every one of the minor league teams, and that's just the way it's been. But I was wondering too, what are they do? Are they keeping the AAA players? Do you know? I mean, that just sounds a little bizarre to me. It sounds a little.
I would go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off, Terry.
No.
What I was going to say is, Tom Ricketts, the owner of the Chicago Cubs, basically went on Get Up this morning, and he said this. Here's something I hope baseball fans understand. Most baseball owners don't take money out of their team. They raise all the revenues they can from tickets and media rights. They take it out of their expenses. And they give all the money left to their GMs to spend. So that meaning a lot of these money-making franchises take money, put it back into whether it's renovations, whether it's GMs, whether it's player personnel, trainers, translators, anything you can do, especially with baseball being so international now. That's where a lot of the money's going, to keep these players also entertained in the clubhouse. Things like ping pong tables, video games, TV screens, that all comes out of the owner's pocket. So there's not as much money laying around as a lot of people think, and I think that's each team's financial situation is different. Now, I know TC mentioned the Yankees and the Braves are they've already committed to paying their players, I think, through the end of August. Same with the Marlins. But you look at a team like the Oakland A's, Terry, they've forfeited on rent, and I did check it out. They missed another month's rent on their Coliseum, their stadium, and they're not paying their minor leaguers. They're such a small market team, they're really affected. So it really depends team by team. But I do think most of Major League Baseball is paying their top prospects, because if there is an injury, you're right. How do they fill that void? Is that player going to come up, have a couple-day contract, a 10-day contract like they do in the NBA? What's going to happen with those contracts? You're exactly right.
You're talking 35-man rosters here is what you're talking. They're going to take some of the kids from AA and AAA that they feel that can help the ball club. You're going to have an abundance of relief pitchers, and you're going to have some starting pitchers waiting in the wings. They're going to get their shot probably sooner than they thought, especially if they're in a pennant race this year. And then when a team falls out of the race, they're going to probably try to pitch their youngsters, because remember, a lot of these guys aren't even going to play baseball this year. These minor league teams are done. And financially, this is devastating to them, because there's a lot of great people in minor league baseball.
Yeah, and Tom Ricketts went on to close that quote out by saying the scale of losses across Major League Baseball is biblical.
I know that from a professional perspective, I have to visit a couple times with minor league baseball teams and get some, information from accounting information. And I want to tell you, one was like a Class AA team, one was a AAA team. And I got to tell you, there's not much there. I mean, as far as your typical minor league team may have I'm going to say half a dozen employees. They got a couple people that take the tickets and a couple people who do the promotions, and then there's a couple. Well, there's the field maintenance. There's that crew too, but those are really, really short. There's just not much there. There's not much profit, and the minor league teams, they don't bring in enough money, to do anything other than stage the games and get the players from place to place. That's about all they do. And there's just not much money in ticket revenue. And so when you have each major league team has to pay, 4 or 5 team. Anyway, it's quite a burden. And I just thought it was sad because these are some of the littlest people, the smallest financial people in baseball, and they're getting killed by this. It's just sad. I don't know. And again, if you pay a player, by the way, if you pay a player through August, for the minor, that's essentially the whole season, isn't it?
Yes, pretty much for the minor leaguers. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then after that, well, it's not much. So I just thought that was very sad, and I don't know that this whole thing was necessary. About I think this pandemic thing's been really overdone, but it is what it is. But I just hope that fact is able to. People bring that out to see how it's not only the big money guys, that are affected. And when you see a big money guy who says, "Oh, I'm not going to take a salary cut," it's a little ridiculous when you see what happens. Entire teams are getting let go, and people that really play the game with a little chance of getting to the show. But it's just a tough deal.
Well said.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. That's all I had to say. I just want to say, think about the little guys that are getting hurt in this, and maybe some people that we all knew who were in school, or local kids who were drafted by a team and with all their hopes of playing Major League Baseball. And I don't know what a baseball player makes at the AA level, and I wouldn't doubt it's probably $10,000-$15,000 a year, something like that. It isn't much. I don't know what that number.
Possibly. A personal friend of mine, went to high school with him. I think he made up as far as in and out of AA, AAA with the White Sox organization. He said, hands down, rough. That's all he could say. It was rough. They do not make a lot of money. They do get food and everything from the team and lodging. So they're well taken care of in that aspect. But comes time to money and living expenses outside of baseball, not a whole lot.
Yeah, well, that was a point of my call, just for everybody, all the callers, to just think about the little guys who are getting crushed by this whole thing. I think it's really sad.
We agree 100%.
Absolutely. Great call, Double T.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your call.
Take care. Okay. Thank you.
I will chat you next time. Hey, guys, listen. We need to get to our ATL Prime Sports Top 5 in Atlanta Sports History topics here. So let's go start now here with our first top 5 list this evening. Involves the Atlanta Falcons. Guys, who are your top 5 quarterbacks in Falcons history, JJ?
Well, we all know number one's no surprise. We'll start off there. I'll go 1, TC, you go 1, then we'll do the rest there. Matt Ryan, for me, drafted 3rd overall in 2008, Rookie of the Year that same year. Sitting at 109 wins, sitting at 321 touchdown passes. The 2016 NFL MVP, the most valuable player. 30 comebacks, 38 game-winning drives. This is according to NFL.com. Matt Ryan, under pressure a lot, and he actually performs well there. 78.4 passer rating when under pressure. This guy is unbelievable. We may get to another bonus topic later that involves that same topic, but I think the Falcons have a solidified number 1 quarterback, and I don't think anybody's touching him anytime soon. Matt Ryan's my number 1 player and quarterback.
Matt Ryan is the number 1 quarterback in Falcons history. There's no doubt about it, with the Super Bowl appearance. Just a tremendous career, like 65% completion rate. I mean, this guy has led comeback after comeback after comeback. And more importantly, he's been a role model not only on the field, but off the field. First class Everything he's done with the Falcons organization is first class. He's a well-liked player on the team. There is no question about it that the players play very hard for him behind center. And he's had a heck of a career. He's got a shot at the Hall of Fame.
Oh, he'll be a Hall of
no
Famer.
Doubt.
He'll definitely be a Hall of Famer, TT. No doubt about it. Possibly a first ballot, quickest to 40,000 yards, quicker than any other quarterback in the history of the game. Matt Ryan, folks, I know he gets a lot of criticism around the Atlanta area, and I used to be that. But I have backed off of Matt Ryan, and honestly, TC, you know why.
It's about time.
It's 2012. I'll leave it at 2012 right there. I'm just going to leave it there. We had John Abraham on previously years ago, and he voiced
8
his
yards
opinion
away.
strongly.
Remember 8 yards away on the same side of the field was the Falcons against the 49ers, and 8 yards away was Georgia away from beating Alabama to play Notre Dame in the national title game. Yes, on the same side of the field, you can't make it up.
Can't make it up. But Matt Ryan, overall, you mentioned it on and off the field. I had a pleasure of meeting him when I was able to write for the Falcons. Great guy, shook my hand, looked me in the eye, introduced himself, and not many other NFL players did that to me as a young writer. So Matt Ryan, number one of all time in the Atlanta Falcons top 5 quarterbacks list.
I'll give you my number two. I'll give you my number 2, Steve Bartkowski. He led the Falcons in the playoffs 78, 80, and 82. He threw for over 23,000 yards in his career, 154 touchdowns. He made the Pro Bowl a couple of times. That's my number 2, Steve Bartkowski.
Who's
2. Yours?
Ooh, it's got to be Mike Vick.
No, I knew you were going there. I knew it.
Got to be number 7, man. 2001 first overall draft pick for the Falcons, an electric player. Still to this day, the most fun I've ever had watching a quarterback play in the NFL. 4-time Pro Bowler. 38 wins as the Falcons starter, one pesky tie against the Pittsburgh Steelers there, took Atlanta to its second NFC title game. And heck, this guy, his career ended suddenly, and obviously we all know why. You always question, what would things be if he didn't go to prison? And that is my number 2, Mike Vick, simply because of the greatest win, in my opinion, in franchise history, going up to Lambeau Field, taking it to Brett Favre and the Packers in December in the snow. Mike Vick.
Who's 3 for you?
3, I'm going Chris Chandler for the same reasons. Got us to the NFC Championship for the first time in franchise history. Was the only other quarterback that has an above 500 record. So Matt Ryan, Mike Vick, Chris Chandler. That's why I went Chris Chandler 3. 34 and 33 as the Falcons starter, 87 touchdown passes as the Falcons quarterback, and we already know what happened. He lost to John Elway in the Super Bowl, but he led us there. Number 3 on the all-time quarterbacks list, Chris Chandler.
I have Chris Chandler at 3. I know you're surprised I haven't put Vic in there yet.
I am.
Hang on. Best win in Falcons history against the Vikings. Chris Chandler, almost 14,000 yards, 87 TDs, 2-time Pro Bowl, 97 and 98, obviously. I vote Chris Chandler 3.
I don't mind that. I really don't mind that.
Right.
I know why you're putting – we're going down. So I'll let you I'll kick it off at number 4. I got Steve Bartkowski at 4. And the only reason I put him down here is because he was 11 games under 500 as a Falcons starter. He first overall pick. He was 1975 draft pick, 2-time Pro Bowler, as you mentioned, 24,124 yards. That's 3rd all time, I believe, in Falcons history, or 2nd even, if I can't remember correctly. But had 18 comeback wins as a quarterback, but he was 1-3 in the playoffs. That's why I got him at 4. Steve Bartkowski, number 4 all time in Atlanta Falcons history.
You would shoot me if I didn't do Mike Vick at 4. It is 4 for me. You got to remember the win against the Packers, the first quarterback in NFL history to go on the road and win a playoff game in Green Bay. We all know about the rushing stats. He was very exciting, making the Pro Bowl a couple of times, 3 times during his Falcons career. I tell you what, he energized the crowd like no player in Falcons history. I mean, he was exciting. I mean, There wasn't a dull moment with Mike Vick on the field, and that's my number 4.
Yeah, number 4, Barkowski for me, Vic for you. I see why you put Vic 4. No problem. Sure. I'll go 5, and this one was tough. There's a couple honorable mentions.
It was the hardest one for me. Was it for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple honorable mentions, but I went Chris Miller, drafted 13th overall by the Falcons, and you can kind of see the guys I put in there were guys mostly drafted by the Falcons. So 13th overall pick in the 87 draft, the year I was born, won only 23 games as a Falcon starter, though. But he is 3rd all-time passing leader, 14,000 yards, also 87 touchdowns, 1-1 in the playoffs, Chris Miller.
I'm going to go with number 5. He played not only for the Falcons, but he played for the Falcons' biggest rival, the Saints, Bobby Hebert. I'm telling you, when the game was on the line, you wanted the football in his hands because this native of Louisiana was clutch. I mean, he was clutch in the USFL when he took the Michigan Panthers to the title when they had Anthony Carter, wide receiver. Bobby Hebert, to me, was a winner, and that's why I put him in number 5.
It's a great list. To recap, we both had Matt Ryan at 1. 2, I had Mike Vick. Believe you had Barkowski.
That's
Chris
correct.
Chandler, we both had at 3. I had Barkowski at 4. You had Vick at 4. And then I had Chris Miller, and you had Hebert. So
we're not the same, but we're pretty close.
Yeah, and that was going to be my 5, but I went Chris Miller again. I went with the drafted by the Falcons, 13th
the
overall.
Former Oregon Duck, by the way.
Absolutely. That concludes our top 5 quarterbacks in Atlanta history.
All right. I like it. All right. Now we're doing Atlanta history. So let's go with our top 5 Braves pitchers of all time. TC, you're up first.
Oh, you know what? This was way harder to me than the Falcons list because there are so many great so many pitchers in the history of Braves baseball.
So many.
I mean, this franchise has a slew full of 300 winners, but 300 game winners, I've got to go with Greg Maddux. I mean, that 94 season when he was 16-6 with a 1.56 ERA, and in 95 he was 19-2 with a 1.63 ERA. The man was getting games done in an hour and 50 minutes. I mean, I'm telling you, if you went to go get a beer and a sandwich and you took too long, you were in the 5th inning. I loved Greg Maddux. I loved the way he went about his business. I mean, he was in the live ball era. 355 wins, 194 as a Brave. This guy was it. I mean, he didn't have a great playoff record, but the team really didn't hit in the games he pitched. His ERA in the playoffs was like 2.8 and change, and he was still under 500. That's not his fault. You got to get 3 runs of offense. As Bo Bach used to say for years, bunt the ball on the rug. Get Dion running. He always used to say that on Atlanta radio. Put Dion running, bunt the ball on the rug, and get Greg Maddux some runs.
You know what's crazy? You mentioned Deion Sanders. There's someone I can't.
I don't know how he got in here,
exactly.
But he did.
but when he got on base, he almost always scored. It was a crazy stat. But going back, my number 1, and this is tough. And we've had this. You know who I'm saying?
Oh, no, don't do it.
It's John Smoltz. 210 wins, 154 saves. The only pitcher to ever do it. He's the 2nd best pitcher in postseason history. And we can keep on going on. 3,000 strikeouts with the Braves. Unbelievable dominant slider throughout the years. I got to go John Smoltz. Absolute beast as a reliever. Absolute beast as a starter. Did it all. Was actually a pretty good hitter, too. John Smoltz is my number 1, TC.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong. You know I'm going to mess with you.
I know.
He's not my number 1. Let's go to number 2. I'll do my number 2. It's Warren Spahn for me. Won 20 games 12 times in his career. In the 1950s, he won over 200 games. He won 202 to be exact. He probably is the best left-handed pitcher in Major League Baseball history. Warren Spahn at number 2 for me.
Yeah, pretty easy. Warren Spahn is mine. You mentioned it, 356 wins, most games pitched in Braves history. Guys, this is what blew my mind. You start looking at the wins above a replacement. This guy is one of the best of all times. It's Warren Spahn, 91, almost 92 wins above his replacement. Unbelievable pitcher. It's Warren Spahn, hands down.
You know something? He pitched for the Milwaukee Braves,
Correct.
played with Hank Aaron, and also played with Joe Torre's brother, Frank Torre. Remember, Frank during the 96 season had heart problems and all that. It was in the hospital during right before the World Series, and was in the hospital during the World Series. Not only Joe Torre got 2 prayers, he got the 2-0 comeback down 6-0 in Game 4, and they won 4 straight. And then his brother survived with a new heart, and it fit like a fish in water. So, playing with the Torres probably helped out Warren Spahn playing with Frank.
Yep. Yeah, it's a clear number 2, and he obviously could be a number 1. But I think we both went with the trio, one of the trios. So I'll start off with my number 3. It's going to be Greg Maddux at this point. You mentioned 100. Yeah. So you can't not give him a top 3 ranking in the Braves organization. 194 wins with the Braves. This is nuts. And you look at it, bases on balls per 9 innings, 1.3 for Greg. 1.3, folks. The whip, 1.051.
Hey, you know what?
Listen
to this. He averaged only 46 walks a season in his career. These guys pitched today. They walked 46 guys in 5 starts.
It's unbelievable. And another cool stat, and we'll go on to our number 4. And my favorite one, Greg Maddux had like 311 some odd 3-0 counts. Of those 3-0 counts, I think there was like 90 or 100 of them were intentional walks. Unbelievable. Guy never had a 3-0 count. You never saw that with Greg Maddux. Unbelievable stat.
It is unbelievable.
Shoot it with my number 4, and it's got to be the crafty lefty, Tom Glavine. Drafted into the 2nd round by the Braves in 1984, 244 wins as the Brave. It's got to be Tom Glavine here. He's got to make an appearance somewhere. You got to have the big 3 in there.
No doubt. I'll go 3, Tom Glavine for me. 305 wins, ERA about 3.5. He was the 95 Game 6 winner, giving up only 1 hit in 8 innings against Cleveland in the World Series. And you know what I remember most about Tom Glavine? They could all swing the bat, Glavine, Smoltz, and Maddux. But Glavine never, ever gave in. He would walk Barry Bonds with the bases loaded instead of letting him hit it out of the park. He didn't care. He nibbled the corners. He knew how to do it. He was a thinking man's pitcher. He'd struggle a little bit in the first inning a lot. I mean, the other team would be up there 30 minutes up bat, and they wouldn't even score a run. I mean, if you didn't get to Glavine early, forget it.
Absolutely. And did I get ahead? Did I miss your number 4?
No, I'm sorry. It was John Smoltz. You know I was going there. 1 of 2 players with 150 wins, 157 games, 150 saves. The Michigander native. That's what he was, a Michigander. He grew up a Tigers fan like myself. He got traded. The Tigers, when he came to the Braves in 1987, Detroit was in a pennant race with the Toronto Blue Jays. And they end up picking – who did they end up picking up? You could tell – I can't remember. They picked up Doyle Alexander. Doyle went 9-0 down the stretch for Detroit, and then Smoltz came over to the Braves. So short-term, Detroit won the trade. Obviously, long-term, the Braves did. But Detroit traded a Hall of Famer for 1 season in 87. Doyle went 9-0 down the stretch. That was phenomenal. I mean, it was a wise trade. They won the division. They lost to Minnesota in the playoffs. But Smoltz, he's my number 4. I mean, look what he's done. Start, finish, all the injuries, he overcame them all.
Yeah, and you really, honestly, there's no wrong answer to this list.
No,
I know
none.
you're busting my chops about him putting number one, but I just think that's a crazy, unbelievable feat. 150 saves, 200 wins. You'll never see that again, folks.
Right.
Again, just to highlight my top four so far: Smoltz, Spahn, Maddox, Glavin. TC, I'll let you start off our fifth and
mine was
pitcher.
Maddox, Spahn, Glavin, and Smoltz. And before we go to number 5, Smoltz was a thinking man's pitcher too. You know, he changed when he got that elbow injury. He changed his arm angle. He started throwing sidearm. I mean, this guy did everything and anything to stay on the mound. Players today, they don't do what he does. And as a broadcaster, he's the best broadcaster in baseball right now.
I agree.
It's not even close.
And another thing to throw gas on the fire for John Smoltz.
He threw gas, by the way.
Recently reading a book currently called K, The History of Baseball in 10 Pitches. And there's a big article, a big section of the slider chapter. And it was John Smoltz's slider pre and post Tommy John. Pre-Tommy John, 93, 94 over top. Post-Tommy John, same speed, but 3/4. Unbelievable pitcher.
Yeah, we got to hurry. We only got about 8 minutes left.
My number 5 is going to shock everybody.
Mine's Lou Burdett, number 5. We only got 8 minutes left. We got to go. What's yours?
You went Lou Burdett. I went Craig Kimbrell. Best 33rd round draft pick in the history.
Down.
Yeah. Well, hey, he was the most dominant pitcher in baseball, arguably for several years when he was the Braves a closer. He came in, shut down 186 saves for the Braves. Again, he had the best strikeout ratio per 9 innings for the entire time he was with the Braves. Craig Kimbrell's my number 5, the most dominant closer in baseball history, arguably.
Lou Burdett averaged 17 wins between 53 and 61. He averaged less than 2 walks per 9 innings on the hill. I had an honorable mention with Phil Niekro. We got to get to our last topic. I
had an honorable mention in Tim Hudson and Phil Niekro as well.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned Tim Hudson. Great player.
There you go. That's it. Hey, listen, let's talk about the top 5 Atlanta Hawks of all time while we're finishing up here, guys. TC.
Oh, this is, you know what? This is easy to me. It was as easy as the top 5 Falcon quarterbacks. I bet it was easy for JJ too. Mine would be number 1, Dominique Wilkins, the human highlight film. I mean, nobody could dunk the ball like the former UGA player. He had the Hawks scoring record over 23,000 points. He averaged almost 26 a game, almost 7 boards, 2.5 assists. And you know what I remember most, unfortunately, is when the Hawks had the best record and they traded him. And I thought he was playing his best team ball of his career. And they traded him for Danny Manning. You're killing me. I couldn't believe it.
You're killing me.
I mean, they could have went to the finals. And they picked up Danny Manning, who was broken down and injured.
Don't get me started. My Hawks could have had Chris Paul. They drafted Marvin Williams.
Wait a minute. You know what? And I love Lenny Wilkins. Loved him as a coach here. But it was a terrible move to bring in Danny Manning. Terrible. I can't even talk about it no more. I'm frustrated.
It makes me sick. Well, it's easy. That's my number 1 as well. Drafted 3rd overall. Originally by the Utah Jazz. Made his way over here through the trade out of the University of Georgia. Dominique Wilkins. 87 dunk champion. Most minutes played, most field goal attempts, most field goals made, most games played, most 2-point field goals made. So, yeah, he's literally on top of almost every Hawks stat. If you put anybody else there, you'd be crazy. Dominique Wilkins is my number 1. Let's go to number 2, TC.
Yeah, well, this was close for me. It's Bob Pettit, about 26 a game, 16 boards. You know, he led to the Hawks to their only title in 58 in St. Louis. So, to me, it's Bob Pettit.
Bob Pettit as well. Forward center, 11-time All-Star.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, went as well. We agree so far. 11-time All-Star, drafted by the Milwaukee Hawks, played for the St. Louis Hawks, never got to play on the Atlanta Hawks. My only player in the top 5 that did not do so. Bob Pettit, my number 2. TC, I'll start it off with my third player in Hawks history, shooting guard, Pistol Pete Maravich, drafted by the St. Louis Hawks 3rd overall in 1970, averaged over 24 a game with the Hawks. He was a 2-time All-Star. Pistol Pete Maravich, one of the most memorable names.
I tell you what, I think Tim Brando, who's been a guest of our show, and he works for Fox Sports, one of the best college basketball broadcasters out there. I think he'd kill us if he didn't have the LSU native in the top 3. He'd probably be calling us right now going, what is wrong with you? Pistol Pete is definitely there. I almost put him 2. That's how close it was. You got to go with Pistol Pete.
That I agree. I almost put him 2 there, but Pettit had the 2 MVPs. Got to go Pettit there. TC, I'm anxious to hear your number 4. I think this is where we'll get a little differing. I got center Dikembe Mutombo as my number 4 Atlanta Hawks player of all time. 3rd all time in blocks for the Hawks. We all know the no swing, the no back and forth. Dikembe Mutombo.
No, not even close. Give me Lou Hudson. Scored 22 a game. They nicknamed him Sweet Lou. I mean, he was the first face of the Atlanta Hawks franchise. Lou Hudson for me, without a doubt, back in the late 60s when it came over from St. Louis to Atlanta. It was Lou Hudson for me. No doubt, number 4. Can I do number 5?
Absolutely.
I bet you don't have him. I bet you a Coke you don't have him. Kevin Willis is my number 5. 14 a game, 9 on almost 10 on the boards, came over from Michigan State, 7th all-time scorer. I didn't even have Dikembe Mutombo in my top 5. Sorry, I did. I had Kevin Willis. Do you have Kevin Willis at 5?
You're going to be surprised at who I have at 5.
Mookie Blaylock?
Guard, small forward out of Creighton University. Kyle Korver shot 45% from the 3-point line as a
You got Kyle Korver?
Got Kyle Korver. He was very very, very important on the Hawks 60-win team, the best Hawks team in history. They're the only team that made it to the conference finals. His only All-Star was as an Atlanta Hawk, a 45% career free throw 3-point percentage, great free throw shooter as well. Kyle Korver is my number 5 Hawk of all time. The greatest 3-point shooter in Hawks history.
I would have went Mookie Blaylock, Dikembe Mutombo. I mean, there were other guys I could have put in there. I would have never thought he was even in my top 10. I would have taken Spud Webb over him. I mean, I don't see
I'm a little biased. I
respect
Korver,
your opinion. Oh, you are biased. There's no doubt about it. The guy can shoot the ball. He can shoot the 3. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. That's our top 5 Hawks.
Awesome. Hey, listen, let's get a bonus question. We just got a couple quick seconds here left. Bonus topic. Let's talk about dual threat quarterbacks. They're the new norm in the NFL. Got to ask, are the Falcons behind the ball with Matt Ryan? JJ, what do you think?
Absolutely not. As I mentioned earlier, I'm really glad we got to this topic. I'll be very quick. Under pressure, Matty Ice is terrific. 216 pressures last year. The second closest person in pressures was Daniel Jones, 31 behind him. And he still had a Pro Bowl type season. Give him some time. You don't have to worry about being a dual threat quarterback. You can still win in this league as a pocket passer, I believe. So, no, they are not behind the ball. Get them an offensive line. Get them a running game. Hello, Todd Gurley. We're not behind the ball. Matt Ryan's ready to go.
I mean, look, as you said many times on the show, they're married to him for better or worse. They're married to him on the field, and they're married to him off the field with a contract. So, no, I think Matt Ryan is definitely good enough to get them back to the Super Bowl. They got to get the offensive line fixed. They seem to have done it here with the young kids coming up to play the line this year. They've got Gurley for the running game if he stays healthy. They obviously have the wide receivers. On the other side of the ball, the defense has got to get to the quarterback. I mean, you've got to stop the other team from scoring. I don't care how good your quarterback is. We've all heard about the rumor Deshaun Watson's out there. Let's go get him. Well, you know what? There's another team involved. Yes, Bill O'Brien has made some crazy trades. He made one this offseason, getting rid of DeAndre Hawkins for a box of crayons and some glue. But that's a story for another day. But we're not going to get rid of him to get, to get Deshaun Watson for Matt Ryan. They're not doing that. That's crazy. And I wouldn't do it anyway. Matt Ryan is an established veteran quarterback who's got plenty years left in him. They just need to build a club around him.
Agreed 100%.
That's it. Time's up.
Hey, I like your picture better than the S.
Yeah, I know. I had to do something because you were ragging me about that S. So next week I'll try to be on par with you fellas, okay? Get my video up and at 'em, So listen, final thoughts, anybody?
Well, I was going to say, Stephanie, I've got Randy Lurch coming on tomorrow here on ATL Prime Sports at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to talk a little bit about his book again, God in the Bullpen, a good friend of mine. And also, number 2, we're going to talk about labor relations from a former player to what it's like then to what it is now. Because as we all know, baseball is going through a serious problem. And if they don't get it fixed, the game is in serious trouble.
Final thought for me. Thanks for all of our callers. Wayne, Terry, Dave as our guest. That's all I got.
Hey, get you one.
Get you one.
Hey, listen, I'm about to go eat this stewed chicken. I've been cooking this stewed chicken for hours on the stove.
I'll be right over.
A second ago, it's like, oh my gosh, tastes like mom. So I will see you guys.
I'll be right over.
Week.
Save me a plate.
Come over and get some. I'll send it to you. You're listening to the Prime Time in the ATL Prime Sports with TC, JJ, me, Stephanie Stallworth. Thanks to our guests, callers, Greg, Mark, everybody. Check us out online. Follow us. We'll follow you back. And we'll see you again next week on ATL Prime Sports. See ya.
Get you one of these, everybody.
Get you one. Stay safe, everybody. Love y'all. Bye.
Next week, everybody. Same time, same place.
Sistema de chão.